We like to think our judgments are objective, that when we dislike someone, it's because of their arrogance, their laziness, their hypocrisy, their attitude. But sometimes, it's none of those things. Sometimes, the reason you flinch at someone else's behavior is because you've seen it before, in yourself. That's the strange thing about judgment. It often hides familiarity. The very traits that irritate you in others are often the ones you've disowned in yourself. The coworker who talks too much in meetings? You hate that you sometimes over-explain to sound smart. The friend who posts constant selfies? You remember when you did that too, and hated how it made you feel needy. The person who never seems to take responsibility? You quietly recognize the same avoidance you practice in your private life. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Most of what we judge in others isn't about them. It's about the reflection they hold up. We don't realize how much similarity disturbs us. When someone behaves in a way that resembles our own insecurities, it's like holding a mirror to a wound we've tried to forget exists. You see someone brag online and think, they're so full of themselves. But what you might actually mean is, I've been that desperate for attention before. I just learned to hide it better. That's the essence of projection, a defense mechanism where your brain says, I'll push this uncomfortable truth onto someone else so I don't have to own it. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. Our dislike becomes less about them and more about avoiding our own reflection. It's easier to roll your eyes at their behavior than admit you once did the same. It's safer to criticize than to confront. And so, judgment becomes emotional camouflage. You're not angry because they're wrong. You're angry because they remind you of who you were trying not to be. Every judgment you make runs through one invisible filter, your ego. The ego's job isn't to help you grow. It's to protect your self-image. It wants you to believe you're good, kind, evolved, self-aware. So when someone around you behaves in a way that threatens that image, your ego reacts. You see a part of yourself you haven't accepted, and your mind says, that's not me. And the quickest way to prove that? Judge the person who reflects it. It's psychological displacement. Your ego builds distance to keep your self-concept intact. So you condemn the arrogance you've once used to feel important. You mock the vulnerability you've once felt ashamed of. You label others fake, lazy, or attention-seeking, just to reassure yourself that you've evolved past that. But evolution doesn't mean elimination. It means integration, learning to see your shadow and not run from it. Judgment is often a symptom of egoic denial. The louder you judge someone, the more of yourself you're trying not to see. Social media made this mirror unavoidable. Every scroll is a reflection of a possible version of you. More successful, more confident, more expressive, more reckless, more broken. And each version triggers something: envy, irritation, mockery, or quiet comparison. You might think, I'd never post like that, but your brain whispers, you wish you could without being judged. You might say, they're so fake, but somewhere deep down, you know you cure it too. That's why we love calling others performative. It gives us moral superiority while allowing us to hide the fact that we perform too, just in a more tasteful way. The algorithm rewards judgment because judgment is engagement. Every click, every sneer, every eye roll is a form of participation. We think we're observers, but we're actually mirrors interacting with mirrors. In the digital world, the line between them and you blurs completely. You're scrolling through reflections of the same human need to be seen, validated, understood, safe. And yet, your first instinct is still to judge the reflection instead of recognizing the resemblance. Projection is one of the mind's oldest survival tools. When you see a trait you dislike in yourself, your brain unconsciously attributes it to someone else. It's not malice, it's protection. Imagine your psyche as a room. Everything you love about yourself sits in the light. Everything you can't accept, your pettiness, envy, insecurity, shame, stays in the dark corners. Now, when you meet someone whose behavior resembles something from those dark corners, your subconscious lights up. You don't think, oh, I recognize that from my own patterns. You think, I can't stand that about them. The irony is, the intensity of your reaction is proportional to your denial. The more you reject a part of yourself, the stronger your reaction to seeing it in others. That's why judgment feels charged. It's not rational, it's emotional. You're not just reacting to the person. You're reacting to an internal conflict they unintentionally awakened. The ego has three main strategies for avoiding the discomfort of self-recognition. 1. Moral superiority. You justify judgment by calling it standards. She's so shallow. He's so lazy. You convince yourself it's about principle, not projection. But often, you're just moralizing your insecurities, giving them cleaner language. 2. Humor as distance. You hide judgment behind jokes. You mock others' mistakes or exaggerate their flaws for laughter. But deep down, humor becomes armor. It protects you from empathizing, because empathy would mean seeing yourself in them. 3. Emotional reversal. You flip discomfort into disdain. Instead of saying, "I relate to that," you say, "I'd never do that." You turn similarity into opposition. And in doing so, you build emotional distance where understanding could have grown. These tricks keep you safe, but small. You never evolve past what you judge. You just learn to hide it better. At the root of all judgment is fear. Fear of being seen. Fear of not being enough. Fear of becoming what you once were. When you judge people who remind you of yourself, what you're really afraid of is relapse. That old, unhealed version resurfacing. Maybe you once were naive, and you hate seeing someone naive now. Maybe you once were insecure, and you despise seeing someone crave validation. Maybe you once felt small, and now you can't stand watching others shrink. You tell yourself, "I've grown past that." But growth isn't forgetting. It's remembering, without rejection. Until you make peace with who you were, you'll keep punishing others for reflecting that version back at you. The problem with projecting judgment outward is that it eventually circles back. When you constantly highlight flaws in others, your brain starts scanning for them in yourself too. You become hypercritical, perfectionistic, emotionally rigid. You start fearing your own reflection. You silence parts of yourself that resemble what you've condemned in others. It's a slow kind of self-erasure, disguised as self-improvement. You mistake self-acceptance for complacency and confuse self-critique with virtue. But the truth is, you can't shame yourself into growth. You can only accept yourself into awareness. And awareness, when done right, naturally softens judgment, both toward others and yourself. Healing starts the moment you ask, "What about this person reminds me of me?" That single question turns judgment into reflection. Instead of condemning, you start decoding. Why does their arrogance bother me? Maybe because I used to equate confidence with arrogance, and I still haven't learned the difference. Why does their oversharing annoy me? Maybe because I still judge my own need for attention. Why does their insecurity frustrate me? Maybe because I'm still learning to forgive mine. Every time you recognize the mirror, the projection loses power. You no longer need to push parts of yourself away. You can hold them, understand them, and eventually integrate them. This is emotional maturity, not the absence of judgment, but the awareness beneath it. Owning your shadows doesn't make you weak, it makes you whole. You stop pretending to be purely good and accept that you're human, contradictory, layered, imperfect. You can love and envy someone at the same time. You can forgive and still remember. You can admire and still be triggered. The goal isn't to eliminate projection, it's to recognize it early enough to choose differently. When you stop fighting your reflection, you stop fighting others. And when you stop fighting others, empathy flows in. You see that we're all acting out versions of the same story, trying to become who we wish we were, while hiding who we're afraid we still are. As you grow, mirrors start turning into windows. Instead of reflecting judgment, they reflect understanding. You start seeing people not as threats to your ego, but as invitations to self-knowledge. That person who reminds you of your younger self? You feel compassion instead of irritation. That colleague who behaves like the worst version of you? You feel curiosity instead of resentment. You begin to notice. Every person you judge is an unhealed chapter in your autobiography. And when you learn to read those chapters instead of ripping them out, life stops feeling like a competition and starts feeling like a classroom. Here's a quiet skill worth mastering. When you feel judgment rising, pause and ask, is this about them or is this about me? If you can answer honestly, you'll find 80% of your emotional conflicts dissolve before they even begin. Reflection replaces reaction. Curiosity replaces criticism. And humility replaces ego. Because at the end of the day, self-awareness isn't about being right. It's about being real. The people who trigger you aren't enemies. They're unintentional teachers. They show you what you've suppressed, what you've outgrown, and what you still need to heal. Their presence exposes your blind spots, not to punish you, but to free you. So instead of asking, "Why do I hate them?" ask, "What part of me are they trying to show me?" If you can learn from that, judgment turns into awareness. Awareness turns into empathy. And empathy, the pure, unfiltered kind, dissolves projection completely. Because once you see yourself in others, it's hard to keep pretending we're that different at all. You spend your whole life standing between two forces, your ego, which wants to be right, and your soul, which wants to be whole. Judgment belongs to the ego. Understanding belongs to the soul. Every time you choose understanding, you reclaim a lost piece of yourself. And slowly, the people you used to judge stop looking like threats. They start looking like mirrors that taught you how to see.